Hello everyone, and welcome back down here to the Gamer's Den with me, your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire. Now, not too long ago, I put out a video talking about D20 Modern, basically a tabletop role-playing game that uses the D20 rules, like what you find in 3rd edition's Dungeons & Dragons, Pathfinder, and the like. But it has some changes, and the setting is different, being that it's in the modern day and age, whether you're going action movie kind of a setting, or some sort of heist movie kind of thing, or monster hunting in the modern day world, a la Blade, or Supernatural, or Buffy the Vampire Slayer, or some psionic agents, or shadowy world conspiracy. Whatever the setting is, it's in the modern day and age, and how fantastical or mundane it is depends entirely on the DM and the story that the players want to be involved with. And that flexibility is a part of what makes D20 Modern just so much damn fun. It's adaptable, it's usable for so many different things. But that adaptability can leave it feeling kind of generic, kind of boring almost, because it's very much up to the players and the DM to kind of put in that little bit of work to make the characters a bit more defined, to give them a bit more life. And really, the mechanics should be in there to where the characters just feel a bit more distinct. But that's the trade-off with having a greater deal of flexibility. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself here. What I wanted to do tonight is talk more about what makes D20 Modern different, and get a little bit more into its strengths and weaknesses with a bit more coherence, and also a format that's a bit more, well, presentable. I'm sure some of you were able to keep up with me just fine as I rambled on and reiterated all of these different things that I really enjoyed, but I didn't have any nice slides to present the information in a way that might make it a bit more easy to follow for other folks. And so that's what we're going to be doing today. So, what makes this game different? What makes it fun and a little bit aggravating to play with? Well, to start with, you have your base classes, and you get 6 of them. You have your strong hero, fast hero, tough hero, smart hero, dedicated hero, and your charismatic hero. And from there, it's really not too hard to figure out what they're about, but well, we'll get to that in a moment. Strong hero is your damage dealer. Fast hero is your sneaky, dodging, damage reducing kind of hero. And damage reducing in that their class abilities help them prevent from taking as much damage as they normally might. Then you have your tough hero, who's the tank, and for some reason is the only base class to have the gambling skill. Why? I don't know, but for some reason that's the case, and that's one of the first things that I usually end up ignoring if I'm running this game for anybody. Then you have Smart Hero, which is the planner and knower of things. It is a support class, but they're more of a skill monkey kind of class. The Fast Hero certainly is too, but more focused on, well, stealth and disable device. And the Smart Hero can disable device as well. They just have access to all the knowledge skills, and they get the highest number of skill points out of all the base classes. Then you have your dedicated hero. Now this one is definitely, well, a more dedicated support role. They have access to the heal skills, certainly a fairly wide range of knowledge skills as well, and their class abilities kind of help emphasize that, and also give them some good bonuses to certain skills that get picked out. And your charismatic hero, well, the charismatic hero is typically going to be the face of the party. They capitalize on the charisma stat. They get all the social skills. They get bonuses to those social skills. That's about the gist of them there. One thing that definitely makes the D20 Modern setting unique in comparison to other games is that all the classes, base classes, advanced classes, prestige classes, each class will provide a static bonus to defense. It's just a class defense modifier. Depending on what class you take will dictate how much of a bonus that you get. For example, as I mentioned before in the previous video, Fast Hero is going to have the highest defensive rating out of all the classes, getting a +3 at first level. And considering that charisma is one of the, or not charisma, dexterity is one of those prime stats that just does so much, it never hurts any class to have a good dexterity score. A fast hero with a high dexterity, which they probably should be having anyways, say that you put the 18, you get an 18, you put that into your dexterity, that's a +4 bonus to defense right there. Everybody gets a base defense bonus of 10, so we're at a 14. One level of fast hero, that's another +3, so without any armor at all, you're at a 17 armor class, which that's going to give you a solid amount of protection right there. Throw just a basic leather jacket on, which requires no training to get the full bonus out of it at all. Gives you a +1 bonus to your armor. You're now at an 18, and a leather jacket is something, well, who hasn't had a leather jacket at some point? Any light armor or other light armor, which most of them will be around the +2, +3 range, well, you've got a character that's almost untouchable for a lot of first level combat encounters. It's going to take some pretty high die rolls to even touch this character, and you can be sitting at a 21 pretty easily right out of the gate, and armor stackable, so if you have an undercover vest with a leather jacket on over top of it, there's a +4 bonus right there. Now, some DMs and storytellers like to rule that, you know, whichever armor is going to give you the higher bonus, that's what you're going to get. You're not going to have others stacking on, but, you know, really though, if you have layers of armor, that's going to give you greater degrees of protection. And since it's all light armor, really light armor, it's really not going to do too terribly much to hinder you overall. So you can very easily start with a character that's going to be incredibly hard to hit right off the bat. Not only that, but all 6 of these classes have different class talent trees. Some get more trees than others, like Strong Hero gets 3 of them with Melee Smash, Ignore Hardness, and Extreme Effort, but they're certainly not all created equally. Melee Smash and Ignore Hardness are definitely way more important than Extreme Effort for most settings, especially since this is a game that's set up to assume that no matter what setting you're playing in, there's going to be combat of some kind. Some will have more combat emphasized than others, but you're going to be getting into a fight at some point. And Melee Smash gives you a +1 bonus to damage every time you pick it, topping out at a +3. Ignore Hardness, you ignore 1 point of an object's hardness up to 3 points that you ignore. So something that's got a hardness of 10, you can ignore 3 points of that, and makes it easier for the damage you deal to ignore that hardness and just get straight into dealing hit point damage to the object, making it easier to break things. Combined with Melee Smash, well, you know, makes life a lot easier for breaking most things. Extreme Effort, well, any full round action you take that requires a strength check, you get a +2 bonus on each time you pick it, topping out at a +6. I mean, that's nice, but, I mean, whoop-de-doo, it's a full round action that you're getting a +6 bonus on. I mean, really, you got a decent strength score and you've been pumping skill points into anything you might be taking a full round action with. Well, you know, it's maybe not all that useful. If your DM rules that this applies to things like grapple checks, well, then that makes it a little bit more interesting and certainly much more viable and useful. But, you know, in comparison to just having a guaranteed output of damage, and not only that, but damage that gets multiplied as part of critical hits, well, you know, it's not quite so good in the face of things. And Fast Hero really emphasizes a huge disparity between class talents that can be picked, as they get the defensive talent tree and fast movement. Guess what fast movement does? Every time you pick it, +5 bonus to your movement speed. So instead of a 30, you get a 35. What's the defensive talent tree do? Well, first pick, you get evasion. What does evasion do? You might be asking yourself, especially if you're new to any sort of tabletop game or anything within the D20 rule set. What evasion does is anytime you need to make a reflex saving throw for half damage, so area of effect attacks like fireballs, grenades, automatic weapons fire, anything like that, if you succeed, you take half damage. Well, for a fast hero, if they succeed, they take no damage. So, taking no damage from area of effect attacks, which no matter what the setting is you're in, whether you have a crazy advanced sci-fi, wizards and clerics calling down the might of their gods or flinging arcane energy about, or some dude with a machine gun that's just spraying the area down, evasion is going to be useful. And Uncanny Dodge 1 and Uncanny Dodge 2 only increase those advantages further. Not only that, but going to level 2 in this, that +3 bonus that you get from your class defensive bonus goes up to a +4, and this increases as you advance in levels in these base classes. These disparities only really get that much more obvious when you take a look at the more skill-oriented classes, because while they do get some abilities that help in combat, well, let's just crack open the book here and give you an example. So let's go with, say, the Smart Hero. The Smart Hero's talent trees are Research talent tree and Strategy talent tree. Now, Research just kind of goes towards the whole skill monkey thing that I mentioned before. Savant, select one of the skills listed in the following paragraph. The Smart Hero gets to add a bonus equal to their Smart character level when making checks with that skill. And the Smart Hero can take this talent multiple times for different skills. And this applies towards a computer use, any of the crafting skills, decipher script, demolitions, disable device, etc., etc. It's not bad. It's not bad at all. I mean, an increasing bonus for picking out a talent once, it only applies to one skill, but that's still actually not a bad talent at all. But it's still something that's more skill-oriented, but that's fine, because not every character needs to have a huge emphasis on combat, even though combat is going to be more than likely be, if not a regular thing, it's something that's going to crop up in most campaign settings. Now, Strategy talent tree is the combat-oriented talent tree for the Smart Hero, and their first one out of this is Exploit Weakness, which, after one round of combat, the Smart Hero can designate one opponent and try to find ways to gain an advantage by using brains over brawn. The Smart Hero uses a move action and makes an intelligence check, DC 15, with a bonus equal to the Smart level. If the check succeeds, for the rest of combat, the Smart Hero uses their intelligence bonus instead of either strength or dexterity bonus on attack rolls, as he finds ways to outthink his opponent and notices weaknesses in his opponent's fighting style. It also has a prerequisite, one talent from the Research talent tree, which is probably going to be Savant, since, well, yeah, anyways. Exploit Weakness isn't bad. It's not bad by any stretch at all. But the thing is that the Smart Hero does not get a great attack bonus, which the previous classes get a good to better one. Good in that for every level that, say, the Strong Hero gets, they get a +1 each time, advancing all the way up to a +10 bonus to their attack rolls, whereas Tough Hero, by the time they top out, they're nowhere near that. So they already have a lower attack bonus, and this skill lets them make up for, this talent lets them make up for that somewhat by letting them substitute their intelligence bonus for their strength or dexterity scores, but they're still already working with a much lower attack value than anything else. The other abilities are things like Plan, which can give a bonus to other characters in the group for combat, but really the bonuses are so minimal in comparison to just just focusing on developing their skills, they're going to get much more value out of that. Unless it's a setting where you can see where this is starting to become a mess already. The disparity is pretty significant unless DMs are making an effort to keep the characters out of combat, but still finding a way to keep them involved in an indirect fashion, which it gets to be a bit messy. Whereas, you look at a setting like Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder, where even though wizards and sorcerers have very, very terrible physical attack skills, through their spells, they're able to contribute in other ways. Some of those ways may still be support-oriented, but they still have a much more direct and tangible effect. Whereas in D20 Modern, DMs have to think a little bit more and try to plan ahead and find different ways for these support-oriented characters who have no way to directly contribute to combat with their abilities, or at least no way to contribute effectively to combat with their abilities. They need to find a way to keep them included by emphasizing opportunities for them to use skills they might be developing. And for the base D20 Modern, that can be a little bit tricky, whereas, say you go into sci-fi, you can have a smart hero character who's a dedicated hacker or slicer, whatever term you want to use for it. They can patch into, say, a ship's security systems if they're on a starship, and start using their disabled device and computer use skills to basically reroute the security systems to no longer target the players, but designate the ship's crew as enemy combatants, so that way any automated turrets, any automated bots that are patched into a ship's security system, those will begin turning on the ship's crew and stop affecting the characters, the players directly. And that also creates an opportunity for, there's a ship will probably have some kind of systems administrator, their own cyber security, that will start trying to take control of those systems back from the hacker, or be trying to prevent them from taking control of the ship's security systems. But for a setting in a modern day and age, doesn't quite work that way unless you're, you could always go more movie hacker than realistic hacker, but if you're playing with anybody that knows anything about IT and security systems, it might yank them out of things a little bit. But we're getting into some very specific things there. Point being, smart hero, dedicated hero, they don't have a lot of ways of directly contributing to combat, which is going to crop up at some point. So those moments may not be quite as fun for them. So DMs, storytellers, you really need to be careful about balancing encounters out to let individual players shine and get their time in the spotlight and feel like they've done something to effectively contribute to the story. That really, really has to happen here just because of these disparities. Now, some other things that make D20 Modern different. Characters get starting occupations, and starting occupations are basically what the character did before their role as a monster hunter, psi agent, criminal mastermind, etc., whatever the setting is. These will usually give an additional class skill or a miscellaneous bonus to a skill if it's already a class skill for the character. Some of them will give extra feats or a wealth bonus, and we'll get into what a wealth bonus is in a moment. This is a mechanic that's an attempt to try to give a character a certain sense of history. Like if you pick out a character who had the military background, well, what branch of the military were they in? If it's in the U.S., were they in the Navy? Were they Marine Corps? Were they Army National Guard, Army, Air Force, Coast Guard? Which of these branches were they involved with? And that can give a certain amount of history, help inform what a character's mindset might be. Certainly if they're military oriented, they get a bonus feat. They can go combat, martial arts, personal firearms proficiency, some kind of armor proficiency, and that can lend itself really nicely to kind of helping the players build up a bit more of a background and have that background have a little bit more of a tangible effect on the players' starting skills and abilities, inform what they're capable of, which can be nice, although I feel like this was underutilized in some ways. So again, you DMs and storytellers out there running these games may want to kind of tweak or hone things a little bit more and maybe go a step further. If the players are giving you more background details, maybe consider giving them a couple of bonus skills here or there, or let them have a unique ability to help kind of flesh the characters out and make them a bit more distinct. Certainly isn't really going to hurt. Well, depending on how crazy you get with it, it can hurt nothing at all or wildly unbalance things, but we're already dealing with an unbalanced system to begin with. Wealth bonus. What do we do with that? Well, D20 Modern had an interesting way of trying to deal with wealth, money, finances, and the acquisition of equipment and resources. This was supposed to take the place of a hard money system by making it abstract and simple to track. Basically, wealth bonus is treated as its own score that can increase or decrease over the course of gameplay. If something falls under your wealth bonus score, say you're trying to buy a baseball bat, you can try to acquire that item by making a wealth bonus check. And if a baseball bat's a relatively simple and cheap item, if it falls beneath what your baseline score is without even having to roll, you can acquire it with basically no cost. It takes you no meaningful effort to acquire. It has almost no impact on your resources, so there's no decrease for the cost of trying to acquire it. If you try to acquire something that exceeds your score, like say a high-end vehicle, say you have a +9 bonus, a wealth bonus, and you're trying to acquire a vehicle that's got a rating of 13 on the wealth bonus scale, well, then you have to roll. But with that +8, you're gonna be able to acquire that pretty easily. But when you roll, if you succeed, you decrease your wealth bonus by 1, but you get the item. If you fail, you still decrease your wealth bonus score by 1, representing the time and effort and the resources put towards trying to acquire the item. So your wealth bonus can increase or decrease, but here's the thing. Wealth bonuses are the wealth bonus system is really easy to break. It doesn't take too long at all. If you have the windfall feat, which gives you a pretty significant +6 bonus, on top of rolling really well for your starting wealth bonus, which was 2d4. And then if you have a background that gives you a significant wealth bonus, you can start with a 12 or 13 really easy, really early on, and get a whole bunch of stuff without decreasing anything. And then even then, over the course of gameplay, you're just going to end up acquiring stuff. Some settings you may have to explain why your character has this particular item and how they're getting away with it, and maybe deal with the consequences with NPC interactions or even combat encounters as a result. But the course of gameplay can cause your wealth bonus to increase as well, especially if your character still has some sort of a regular day job. And at a certain point, since your wealth bonus score can get fairly high really easily, you can start acquiring some really high-end stuff with very minimal effort and not having to decrease your wealth bonus in the slightest. It's a really easy system to abuse, and plus, making wealth abstract just never really quite sit right with any of us, myself, or any of my friends that have played this. we've always just ended up doing away with it pretty damn fast and just tracking people's money or whatever resources they might have that they're using to acquire items or goods and services. So, whether you use it or not, it's up to you. Now, I mentioned classes before. This is one of the big strengths, but it's kind of a double-edged sword here. There are lots of advanced classes in D20 Modern, and advanced classes are where you're really going to start distinguishing your characters from others, at least from a game's mechanics standpoint. And just in the base book alone, you get choices like Soldier, Gunslinger, Martial Artist, Infiltrator, Daredevil, Bodyguard, Field Scientist, Techie, Field Medic, Investigator, Personality, and Negotiator. And in one of the later sections of the book, which details the different kinds of settings you can run with this rule set, you also have things like Mage and Acolyte. And Acolyte is basically the placeholder for Cleric. So that's a fair number right off the bat there, and you start throwing in things like Urban Arcana or D20 Future or D20 Past. You start expanding that even more, and you start adding in things like Prestige classes. Right now is actually a good opportunity to admit, or to bring up, that for base classes and advanced classes, each class tops out at level 10, meaning you will be picking other classes at some point. Whether it's another base class or going into an advanced class, you are going to be dipping into a couple of different things here. And there's not really any limit to what you dive into. There's no experience point penalties, there's no set limit on what you pick out that your character's going into. So you can mix and match a lot of different things and create something utterly broken. Whether that's broken in a way that the character is entirely useless, or broken in a way that they're just stupidly overpowered, that remains to be seen. And that's where you get into a lot of trouble here. One of the areas and ways in which you get into a lot of trouble here. It can be kind of hard to tell unless you're very familiar with the system and understand the mechanical synergies that different classes and their class abilities have. You can really mess things up for yourself, or stumble into something really incredible. It's kind of hard to say. It's where I'd say this is best to just kind of pick a theme and sort of stick with it. The other problem with a lot of these classes is there's a lot of class overlap, especially if you're throwing in a lot of other classes from the other books. Like D20 Future adds in things like Ace Fighter Pilot, Diplomat, Dreadnought, Hex Warrior, or Helix Warrior, and a couple of other different things, really. Oh yeah, there's also D20 Apocalypse, which also adds in some advanced classes. So you can start getting into classes that overlap really in really fundamental ways. Personality and Negotiator, I talked a bit about both of those before. Personality, especially in a game that's emphasizing a lot of combat, is not going to be incredibly useful, and even in games where there's more of an emphasis on subtlety and social interaction, the personality's class abilities are not that great. There's a lot that could have been done with it and should have been done with it, but well, considering that their top tier ability, their level 10 ability, lets them affect one target within 15 feet of them, or within 15 feet of a radio, TV, or telephone, it's not that great, especially since, you think about the mechanics of it. They can pick out one target that's in 15 feet of them that can hear them and understand them to fill them with rage, fill them with a big morale boost, or to utterly crush them. It's just, how do they understand that they're picking out a single target that's on the other end of a TV? How they can't see the target, they don't know if the target's watching. How can they select the target? It just doesn't make sense, and it really is kind of a lame and kind of a crappy ability. It should be able to affect multiple targets, especially if it's an ability that can be used through radio or television. I mean, you would think a personality should be able to stir the masses up. I mean, think about proponents of awful regimes, the effect they're able to induce in people. That's something that's incredibly useful there. Think about any TV personality that we have now, or Instagram influencer, or YouTubers. Think about the reactions they're able to incite in people in their target audience. Something like that could be really useful. It could be broken and overpowered, and maybe you want to limit the effects somewhat, but for an ability that's only giving a +2 bonus or +2 or -2 penalty, you know, that's maybe not too terrible a thing. I mean, this ability would be really useful if, say, the team's planning something, they need a distraction, and the personality goes, I got it. I'm going to send my followers out to protest and create this big scene, and they'll draw the cops away, security's going to have their eyes on them. It's going to make it much easier for somebody to just slip in. The techie can go in with the infiltrator, and once we show up there, I can just kind of negotiate our way past things, or just keep the crowd whipped up in a frenzy just by me being there. And the two of you can go in and sneak into things, and if anything goes wrong, well, we have the martial artists that can fly in last second and save everybody, because the techie's going to disable security systems. The infiltrator's going to get into a place where they're not supposed to be once the security's down and everybody's distracted. Yeah, you get the idea. But again, that's dependent on DMs and storytellers being willing to let that ability affect more than one single target. I mean, there's a lot of work that needs to go into some of this game and a lot of its classes. It's not great in that instance. But like I'd also talked about before with the negotiator, being able to start off trying to negotiate and having an action, a free action reserved basically as a surprise round. You know, it's not the most incredibly useful ability, but it is handy and it is flavorful and it fits. I mean, like I said, you can basically build Han Solo with that and shoot first. It's great. I absolutely love having that in there as an option, and it's an early ability too. It's not their capstone level 10 ability. So, you know, there's a lot to love here. There's a lot that you can do with this, but there's a lot that you need to do with this game. It's not no game is perfect by any stretch, but D20 Modern is definitely less so. And I have to admit, there's a reason why it just kind of died out quietly as an optional rule set in 4th edition Dungeons & Dragons. It wasn't even its own independent intellectual property at that point. It was just something they kind of tacked on to 4th edition there and just said screw it, and they've let it die since then. Wizards of the Coast has just kind of let this property sit. It's something I hope they do bring back, but I don't hold out much hope for it. But at least in the meantime, my friends and I, we have plenty of books to work with. We still have them, and there's been just so many incredible adventures, so many laughs. I'm currently running a setting myself that's a Shadow Chasers campaign, which is basically, you know, Supernatural and Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And I've let the players just kind of go a little bit crazy with things a little bit too. Not to where they're overpowered and things are broken and I can't stop them in any way, shape, or form, but it's been a lot of fun. I mean, to give you an idea, one of the players is a Royal Fae Gardener. They're not royalty themselves, but they're a gardener for Fae royalty. And I've given them abilities, given this player abilities that lets her change her appearance. We built her to have a crazy score for growing and maintaining plants, and she has so many different magical herbal remedies and devices that she can make use of. My point is, it's been fun, and if you're willing to be flexible, work around its flaws, and, you know, just kind of lean into some of the broken aspects and just kind of let your players go wild while understanding how to rein things in well enough, this can be a whole lot of fun. And I hope that you take a look into it. Maybe if you can find the books on eBay or through some other seller and pick them up, fantastic. If you know someone with a digital copy, see if they're willing to run the game. Or if you want to pick up a digital copy yourself, do that and just explore and have fun and be willing to work with a flexible and admittedly broken game. But with that said, I've been your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire, and I hope you folks have yourselves a good night.